The river looked calm, but Jason could feel the power of the water beneath the surface. He had seen the dog struggling, its paws barely breaking the water, its eyes wide with fear. Something about the dog's desperate fight pulled at him. Without thinking, Jason rushed forward, the cold wind hitting his face as he waded into the river. His heart raced, not from fear but from a deep need to help. Jason had always been a quiet, withdrawn boy. He spent most of his time alone, avoiding the loud crowds at school, hiding from the world that never seemed to understand him. But as he stood there, with the river swirling around his ankles, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. This wasn't just any dog. This was a chance for Jason to do something real, something that mattered. The dog's body was already slipping beneath the water. Jason reached out just in time, his hand grabbing the dog's collar. The dog's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they understood each other. Both of them were fighting for something: life, hope, and a second chance. Stay with us until the end to find out how this dog, whom Jason saved from the river, would end up becoming his lifesaver in ways he never imagined. Jason didn't know why he acted so quickly. Maybe it was the helplessness in the dog's eyes, or maybe it was the memory of his own life feeling out of control. His world had never been simple. His parents were always busy, and he didn't have many friends at school. Every day felt like it was dragging him further away from the life he wished he could have. He was a quiet kid, the kind of person who walked through halls unnoticed. At school, Jason kept to himself, never speaking up, never feeling like he belonged. He always watched the other kids from the sidelines, not knowing how to join in. Even at home, it wasn't any different. His parents were wrapped up in their work, and Jason often felt like an outsider in his own house. But that day was different. As he held the dog, now trembling in his arms, Jason realized that he wasn't just rescuing the animal. For the first time in a long time, he felt needed. It was strange, but comforting. The dog's frantic breathing slowly started to calm as Jason carried it to safety, his heart still racing from the cold water and the fear of the unknown. Jason named the dog Max. He couldn't explain why, but it felt right. Max became his companion, following him everywhere he went. At first, it was a simple bond, a boy and his dog, but as the days went on, Jason started to realize that Max wasn't just a pet. There was something about Max that made Jason feel less alone, but Jason's troubles weren't over. Life had a way of finding him, even when he tried to hide. Max had a way of making things feel better, even when everything around Jason seemed to be falling apart. The dog was always there, waiting for him after school, sitting by his side when Jason felt like no one cared. It wasn't just about companionship. It was like Max understood him in ways no one else did. Jason started spending more time with Max. They went for walks together, sat in the park, and just shared the silence. It was as if the world around them slowed down, giving Jason a break from the chaos he couldn't escape. Slowly, he found himself laughing more, talking to people more, even if just a little. Max had brought something out in him that had been hidden for so long. But just when Jason thought things were getting better, life had another surprise waiting for him. School had never been easy, and lately the bullying had gotten worse. Jason could feel the eyes on him as he walked down the halls. Whispers, snickers, and the constant pressure of not being enough. It was the same group of kids, always ready to make him feel small, always laughing at his expense. One day, after a particularly hard day, Jason walked home with his head down, trying to block out the words that echoed in his mind. He barely noticed Max trotting beside him, but then the dog did something Jason wasn't expecting. Max stopped and looked up at him, his eyes locked on Jason's face. There was something in the way Max stared, like he was trying to say something. Jason stopped in his tracks, his emotions all tangled up. He wanted to scream, to break down, but he couldn't. His world felt heavy, and the weight of the day threatened to pull him under. But before he could do anything, Max nudged him gently, almost like he was telling Jason not to give up. That night, everything seemed too much. Jason's parents were arguing in the other room again, and the loneliness felt heavier than ever. He had tried to hold it together, but the words from the bullies kept replaying in his head. "You don't belong here. You're nothing." Max, as usual, was right by his side, but this time Jason felt a coldness in his heart. The world felt overwhelming, and Jason didn't know how much longer he could keep pretending he was okay. He went outside, needing to get away from the noise of the house, needing some air to breathe. Jason walked toward the river, the same one where he had saved Max. The cold night air bit at his skin, but he didn't care. His thoughts were louder than anything around him. The river roared in the distance, and Jason's steps grew slower as he reached the edge. He stood there staring at the water, his mind filled with dark thoughts. What was the point of all this? His life felt like a constant struggle, with no end in sight. He looked down at the river and then back at Max, who had followed him silently. For the first time, Max didn't wag his tail. Instead, the dog stood still, watching Jason with a calm that seemed out of place for a moment like this. Jason didn't know what he was doing until he was already at the edge. The river was calling to him, its dark waves pulling at him, tempting him to let go. But before he could take another step, Max did something that shocked him. The dog rushed forward, barking urgently, and jumped into the river. Jason froze, his heart racing. Max swam toward him, his movements strong and sure. Jason reached out in a daze, but Max grabbed his jacket, tugging him away from the edge, as if the dog knew exactly what Jason was about to do. In that moment, Jason realized something he hadn't seen before. Max wasn't just a dog. He was Jason's protector, his lifeline. Max wasn't going to let him fall, no matter what. Jason was in shock. He stood there frozen, watching Max swim back to shore, pulling him away from the water's edge like he had done when he was the one in need of saving. The weight of what had just happened settled in. Max wasn't just a dog anymore. He was Jason's hero. Jason sat down on the damp grass, his breath heavy and shallow. Max lay beside him, his body warm and steady, as if nothing had happened. The dog's calmness was a stark contrast to the storm inside Jason's mind. Jason didn't know how to feel. Part of him still wanted to escape the world, to run away from everything that had been weighing him down. But now with Max by his side, something was different. The loneliness wasn't as loud. The voices in his head weren't as strong. As he sat there, Jason realized that Max had given him a gift, something he hadn't even known he needed. Max had saved him from the edge, not just physically, but emotionally. The dog had shown him that even when life felt hopeless, there was always a reason to keep going. It wasn't the world that had changed, it was Jason. He could still hear the bullies, still feel the weight of his parents' silence. But somehow it didn't matter as much anymore. With Max by his side, Jason felt stronger, more capable of facing whatever came his way. The bond between them was no longer just about a boy rescuing a dog. It was a bond built on survival, on saving each other when no one else was there. And in that moment, Jason knew he wasn't alone anymore. Jason never forgot that night by the river. It was the turning point in his life. Max, the dog he had once pulled from the water, had now pulled him back from a dark place he didn't even know he was heading toward. The dog wasn't just a companion. Max was his protector, his friend, and his savior. As the days passed, Jason's world slowly started to change. He didn't feel invisible anymore. At school, he began to stand taller, speak up, and face the challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. It wasn't easy, but Max was always by his side, reminding him that no matter what life threw at him, he wasn't alone. Jason's parents noticed the change too. They saw him opening up more, sharing his thoughts, and even standing up for himself. They had no idea how much Max had done for their son, how much the dog had helped him heal. But Jason didn't need to explain it. He knew the truth. Max had given him back the will to live, the courage to face the world. Years later, Jason stood by the same riverbank, Max by his side as always. The water roared just like it had all those years ago. But this time, Jason didn't feel afraid. He had learned that even when everything seems impossible, there's always hope. Sometimes it comes in the form of a dog who's willing to jump into the river to save you. As Jason looked down at Max, he whispered softly, "Thank you for saving me." Max wagged his tail as if to say, "I'll always be here." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more emotional stories and click the bell so you never miss one. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we least expect.